Welcome to another All Israel News Update. I'm Hanan Leshinsky, and today we're going to explore an issue that is somewhat off the beaten path regarding coverage of Israel and news about Israel. Now, if you're living in a Western country, you may know the issue or have experience with the issue of illegal immigrants. Now, here in Israel, we don't exactly have the same problem, but there is a similar issue that in Hebrew is called Shabahim. Shabahim are illegal workers who come from Palestinian territories in Judea and Samaria by various illegal means and come into Israel mostly to work here. Now, this is an issue that if you come to Israel as a tourist or just a visitor, you're not likely to experience it firsthand. But living here, we are near Jerusalem, in the hills surrounding Jerusalem. This is a problem that you can actually run into very often. Sometimes friends of mine have even told me often that they saw illegal Palestinian workers squeezing through a gap in the fence or jumping over the many security fences that Israel has put up between Judea and Samaria and Israel proper. And so Israelis here in the area have a lot of experience firsthand with this issue. Now, this has gotten worse in recent months since the Gaza war has broken out, since Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th. Now, what Israel did in response to this was, because the security forces were mainly concerned and focused on the threats in the Gaza Strip as well as on the northern border, all of the security barriers and checkpoints to the West Bank, what is internationally known as the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria, they were all closed down almost completely in the beginning, and they have now been gradually reopened. But this almost complete closure has led to an increased pressure from inside Judea and Samaria for workers who usually have worked in Israel to come back to their jobs or to seek new jobs, as well as for illegal Palestinian workers who are suffering under the worsening economy in Judea and Samaria to seek various, often illegal ways to cross into Israel. Now, even us here at All Israel News haven't really covered this issue in depth. This is mainly due to the very localized nature of many of those incidents, when you have 10 people jumping over a fence here or 5 squeezing through a gap in the fence there. But looking back over the past months, there really has been an increase in many of those kinds of incidents. And also not just localized incidents, but very serious incidents where we saw tens, dozens of people being smuggled through checkpoints. And this, of course, has a security aspect that can't be ignored. And even the Knesset recently introduced a law severely upping the punishments for people who are involved in all of this smuggling of Palestinian workers into Israel, even allowing the confiscation of any and all equipment being used in those smuggling operations, including cars and trucks, and severe financial punishments for people employing those workers inside Israel. Now, let's take a step back and look at how this whole issue of illegal Palestinian work immigration into Israel started. It's important to remember that Judea and Samaria were, of course, taken over by Israel after the Six-Day War in 1967. And immediately after that, the borders were open. It's something that many younger Israelis are even shocked to hear from their elders, from their, my uncle, for example, told me that he used to shop in Gaza, actually. So Judea and Samaria and Gaza were of the same status, and there were no borders back then. So people could drive for shopping into Gaza, into Nablus, into the big Palestinian cities. Often the vegetables and the fruits were cheaper, so people used to shop there. The first border restrictions between Judea and Samaria specifically were introduced after the Second Intifada, where Palestinian terrorists blew up many buses here in Israel, and the government took steps to really separate. So in Hebrew, the barrier that separates Israel and Judea and Samaria is called the separation barrier. Internationally, many left-wing and anti-Israel groups and institutions call this the apartheid wall or the security wall. It actually often, or 90% of the time, this isn't a wall, it's a fence or a barrier. So that's why I talked about people jumping over a fence. It often literally is just that, or even just cutting a hole and squeezing through the gap in the fence. So this is where this whole issue was started. It's not a 50-year issue. It's been an issue for the past maybe 20 years at most. So then, since Israel implemented those security issues, it has also been issuing permits, or basically entry permits from Judea and Samaria into Israel for various reasons. Now, the first and main reason, as we mentioned, is for work. Many Palestinians, tens of thousands or maybe more Palestinians from Judea and Samaria are crossing into Israel each day to work here legally. So they do have permits to go through the checkpoints, through the many checkpoints between Judea and Samaria and Israel proper, to enter, to work in Israel. And at the end of the day, they go back home to Nablus or to whatever city they live in. And as I mentioned earlier, this was almost completely stopped since the war. Now, in addition, there are also many other reasons Palestinians could want to travel to Israel. For example, there are many Palestinians who can visit Israeli hospitals through different reasons. Sometimes organizations are helping them. This is also something that happened between Gaza and Israel. So many Gazan Palestinians actually entered Israel for hospital treatments. And in addition, there are also many Palestinians who are studying in Israel in academic institutions, in universities, and so on and so forth. So it's important to note that this legal way of entrance from Judea and Samaria into Israel isn't really that problematic. People go through the checkpoints, they have personalized permits, so the Israeli state knows who they are, where they're going, what they're doing, and every day they're being checked twice by going through the checkpoint back and forth, so eventual security risks in this way can be eliminated pretty effectively. Now, from the view of the Palestinian Authority, which controls most of the Palestinian populated territories in Judea and Samaria, this is basically very positive. It helps the Palestinian economy because Palestinian workers can earn twice or triple the amount of what they could earn in the Palestinian territories. And this money, of course, goes into the Palestinian economy in the end. In addition, this also lowers unemployment in the Palestinian authorities, which is pretty high. But on the other hand, it creates a huge dependence of the Palestinian economy, of the Palestinian society on Israeli jobs. And this, with, again, as I mentioned, the almost complete closure after October 7 of all the checkpoints and all the barriers, has hugely increased the pressure inside the Palestinian society. It has increased unemployment, and of course, the people are now looking for any way to get back into Israel and get back to those good, high-paying jobs. So it's important to understand that, leaving aside the huge human suffering that Hamas caused on October 7 inside Israel, and the huge human suffering it has caused and is still causing inside Gaza through Israel's retaliation for the October 7 invasion, Hamas has also landed a crippling blow on the Palestinian economy inside Judea and Samaria because of what I mentioned, the increasing poverty, the rising unemployment inside the Palestinian authorities. Now, seen from the Israeli side, this has also harmed Israel immensely. The Israeli economy has grown, if not completely dependent, but there has been a very close growing together of Palestinian workers and several key Israeli economic niches. For example, Israeli agriculture was almost completely dependent on Palestinian workers and some foreign workers who, of course, have also fled since the war. The same goes for construction. Most of the big Israeli construction projects have Palestinian workers. If not, sometimes they have Chinese workers, but they're very expensive. So they mainly rely on Palestinian workers. So this is something that we have seen in the streets here in Israel since October 7. Many construction projects have just stopped, and many agricultural farms and farmers have been saying this openly, that they are going out of business because nothing can be done without the Palestinian workers coming in legally from the Palestinian authorities. Now, with the Gaza war appearing to wind down slowly, the situation is slowly changing again. After Israel almost completely closed off the Palestinian territories, there has been a gradual easing of restrictions, partly because of pressure from inside Israel. As we said, factories, construction work, farms, they're all complaining that they need their workers back. And many of those workers, it's also important to note, have been coming to Israel for 20, 30, 40 years. Many of them speak perfect Hebrew, and this is their way of providing for their families. On the other hand, of course, since October 7, many Israelis have lost trust in those Arab workers, in those workers that they have had in their homes sometimes for 10 years or for however long. But now they're hearing stories from Israelis, from very left-wing Israelis, it has to be said, in the Gaza envelope, in the kibbutzes around Gaza, who are saying, you know, those Palestinian workers who were part of our family almost, they clearly have been given Hamas info that was used on October 7. So Israeli society, on the one hand, needs the Palestinian workers. On the other side, it has lost trust. And this will be something that has to be rebuilt slowly over the coming years. So the issue that we started with, the problem of the increasing numbers of Palestinians crossing into Israel illegally, and potentially, of course, also terrorists crossing illegally into Israel using those same routes, this really points to an underlying issue that will be increasingly important in Israel in the coming decades. The relationship, the economic relations between Palestinian authorities and Israel is changing and will continue to change in the coming years. Israel's leadership will have to find the right balance in the coming years and decades between economic needs and security needs. On the one hand, entry from Palestinian authorities will have to continue to be restricted to prevent illegal workers from coming in, prevent terrorists using the same routes. But on the other hand, the Israeli leadership will have to find the right way to enable Palestinian workers who really just want to work and contribute to Israeli economy and who are desperately needed by farmers, by construction firms, and etc., to contribute to the Israeli economy and positively contribute to Israel and as well to the relations between Israel and the Palestinians who are not going away and will stay here, and we will have to find good neighborly relations with those factions among the Palestinians who are willing to do so. So thank you for joining us for another All Israel News update, this time about a neglected issue. For more info, follow us on allisrael.com or our other social media channels.